The next thing I want to share with you is what I refer to as my Twitter formula. When I started off on Twitter, I got to 800 followers pretty fast, and then I stayed there, kind of just static. Things stopped moving. Didn't matter how many people I followed, I wasn't getting follow backs. Part of it was I was consistently inconsistent. Some days I was engaged, some days I wasn't. Sometimes I just sat there and wondered, what the heck should I tweet about? So what I did is I thought about what makes a conversation interesting. And what makes a conversation interesting is actually contrast in content. So even if you share the best articles in the world, if all you share is articles, people are going to get bored of it. If all you're sharing is tips, people are going to get bored of it. If all you're doing is having conversations, people won't see you in many cases as a thought leader or someone they look to from that within your industry for information or insight. And so the key is that there's many types of tweets, whether they're links, they're tips, they're photos, you name it, that are important. But if you're not varying them and having contrast in your conversation, it's like a real dialogue. If you're having a conversation with someone and all they're doing is asking questions, or all they're doing is making statements, or all they're doing is telling jokes, or all they're doing is giving you one sentence answers, what's going to happen in most cases is we're going to stop listening. What we want is someone who tells a joke, who asks a question, who gives you an answer, who asks for feedback, who shares some information, and that contrast is actually what keeps you engaged in the conversation. So here's my Twitter formula. This is what I have for myself, and I've done with our business as well. It's going to be modified based upon your own industry, but here's how we do it. I typically start off in the morning with a quote. Then I post some content from my own blog or content I've found from people in the community that I think is great information for my audience. Then I typically post a few tips, a sales tip, a leadership tip. If you're in the security business, it'd be a security tip. If you're in the high-tech space or maybe, for instance, cloud computing, it would be a storage tip. And so all these types of things we can post on a regular basis from a tip perspective. Then, of course, I retweet someone. I tend to thank people for retweeting my content or thank them for following me, and I follow them back. Number 6 is I help someone. Number 7, I get social. And number 8, I then reach out and connect with some influencers in my community. Why influencers are important in Twitter is that, you may only have 800 Twitter followers ever, but if you build relationships with several people who have 10 or 20,000 each, you can really leverage your content. So again, this is sort of what I did on a daily basis. When I began to do this consistently, every day I did these 8 types of tweets over and over. It sounds a bit boring, but what it did is it built momentum. It also built some in essence, made me look like a dependable source of information because those people who were following me saw that I was continually active. They'd see my quotes every morning, they'd see my tips, they'd see my links, and after a while, in essence, I began to tell my brand story on a consistent basis. It wasn't robotic, I've got some flexibility, but it was a goal I committed to every single day. Within 2 months, it went from 800 to 3,000 followers, and it ballooned to 10,000 and beyond that. And so this was really an important part of my growth strategy, was great, diverse content. So here's kind of what they looked like. I'll give you some examples. So right here on the upper left-hand side is a morning quote I just posted. Then we go over here, the next quote, or next thing I did was a social media tip. Then the next thing I've done is I've actually shared an article I've written, so that's that content. And then the next thing I've done is actually retweeted or shared someone else's content that's an influencer in the industry. In fact, this particular individual is someone I'd like to do business with. And so I've shared their update because it's an interesting update and something motivational for my audience that they would like, but it also begins to build a relationship because I'm giving Coast Kinetics here some recognition. Then my next tweet, of course, is a quick thanks and a follow back from this individual who shared an interesting article. Then I've reached out and I've decided I'm going to help someone. So I've actually retweeted what a local charity is doing in the marketplace to kind of help build their brand and again, extend a relationship with them. Then lastly, you'll see what I've done here is 2 things. Number 1, I'm just socializing here. So Jason, he's tweeted a photo with the window of his house, which is a great view of the mountains. And I've replied, hey, that's a great view. Where's that shot from? And so this is just being social, but spending time to be conversational again makes us approachable and builds rapport. And lastly, I've reached out to an influencer here. I've tweeted about Brian Thompson, who's really kind of the go-to guy in the entertainment business locally for social media, and I've tweeted one of his articles. He picked up on it and thanked me, and then I used that as an opportunity to, hey, say, my pleasure, we need to catch up, seawall walk or run would be great. So I know he hangs out in the community, he often posts photos of being along the seawall, and I kind of took a bit of a risk and reached out and said, hey, it'd be great to connect with you in person. And he says, hey, that sounds great. So this is actually an example of how I use Twitter to share an article from an influencer and then built a relationship and actually kind of booked an appointment. So these are kind of all the different types of updates that we can do. So what I've done there is I've shown you quickly kind of what my daily updates were. I had a morning quote, I posted some content, I posted some tips, I retweeted someone, I thanked and followed someone, I helped someone out by promoting a local charity, I got social by creating conversations, and I made sure I connected with a couple influencers that day. I did this every single day, and this particular formula, number one, never had me asking, what do I need to do next? Number two, it kept me consistent, which helped me really grow my Twitter following.